Can I start? Okay. Hello, and welcome to the newest episode of the New Stack Makers podcast. This week we are live casting from the show floor at KubeCon and CloudNativeCon 2019 in Europe, in Barcelona specifically. And today we're going to talk about the TOCs, the Cloud Native Computing Foundation TOCs, and the new SIG groups that are being set up. And TOC, first of all, TOC stands for?
Technical Oversight Committee.
Oversight Committee. Excellent, excellent. And you oversee the Technical Oversight Committee for Kubernetes.
Well, for all the Cloud Native projects.
Okay.
Yeah, so I am now the chair of the TOC, and with the committee that kind of curates the projects that come into the CNCF. So, you know, and we're assessing whether or not they meet particular criteria, kind of like Fluent D just recently graduated, and it's the TOC who kind of assess that and, you know,
Excellent.
decide what level projects are at.
Nice. Well, first of all, I forgot to introduce our guest. First is Liz Rice, and in addition to being the TOC oversight, you also work at Aqua Security as a engineer?
I am an engineer, but my job title is Technology Evangelist, and I look after our open source projects.
Nice, nice. And we also have Eduardo Silva. You're an engineer at ARM. Yeah. But you also lead up development of the Fluent D project, the data collector for the CNCF.
Yeah, actually, I'm part of the Fluent D team, but I maintain Fluent Bit, which is a sub-project of Fluent D.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. All right, so let's dive into the TOCs and SIGs and all the other acronyms at CNCF.
Yeah, there's always an acronym. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, we often quote the TOC when there's some issue involved, and but formally, what is it that they do for each of the projects?
So we're really there as the curation of what projects are supported by the CNCF. We are, I guess, also kind of advocating for projects within the CNCF kind of administration. And one of the things that we've done with the SIGs, I mean, you mentioned the SIGs, this is a new thing that we've just recently put in place where it's a special interest group. And we've had special interest groups in the Kubernetes world for a long time, but we now have special interest groups across the whole cloud native thing. And it's a way of bringing together people who have an expertise and an interest. So, for example, the first two SIGs that are being established are storage and security.
Oh, okay.
And, you know, there are amazing people with loads of expertise who are coming together in those SIGs. And it's a way for the TOC to kind of formalize how we can ask for help and support and expertise. And the idea is that this will help us scale out and support more projects and you know, hopefully be able to assess projects with the appropriate level of rigor, but a little bit more efficiently.
So, I mean, are they, the SIGs, they're cross-project concerns?
Yeah.
Sounds like?
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, the security SIG, it was a group of people who had already independently come together and said, but if you're an end user and you want to run a cloud-native stack, there are all these things that you might need to know about security that we don't articulate very well across projects.
Right.
Some projects talk about security more than others, and they very much wanted to volunteer to kind of pull that kind of security thing together. And storage the same. You know, there's all sorts of you know, concerns and specialisms around storage.
And there are certain projects like OpenEBS, but there's a kind of there's still a need to kind of figure stuff out at a high level,
and
so
to have, I mean, you could almost say project neutral groups of people who might want to talk about you know, storage, or there are lots of technologies that you know, people are specialists in, and we want to be able to leverage that that expertise.
Nice, nice. Is it only the project participants who get involved in the SIGs, or can end users chime in
Absolutely,
as well.
yeah. I mean, like everything in the CNCF, it's all kind of volunteer-driven and community-driven. There is a process that we've established around sort of governance of SIGs and what they need to do and how we kind of work with them. You know, so you know, they don't just form themselves. Well, they do kind of form themselves, and then they come to the TOC, and we kind of formally. There is a formal approval process.
Excellent. Excellent. So this week, there's a lot of buzz on Fluent D about the recent graduation in the CNCF hierarchy, I guess you would call it. What does this mean? What does it mean for Fluent D to move from was it incubation status now to full-fledged status? And you're one of the first 5 projects right after Kubernetes.
It's 6, right?
Six,
Yeah.
Yeah, with project number 6, I think that what means for us as developers for the project, I think there's a huge acknowledge. But I think that what is most important for the thousands of users that outside, it means like a huge recognition that this product is stable, is secure, is being updated.
So it's enterprise ready.
Yeah, it has been for a long time, but it's different when you get a public acknowledgement of that. And also, it's not like just us. We started this at Treasure Data, the company, continue being working by ARM, but there are other companies helping to maintain the project. So also that means that if our company disappears, you know, there's still people involved. There's still people who can maintain the project, continue with that. And from an enterprise point of view, that is really important because I want to make sure that my open source project that I'm using in production, that I rely on it, it will be stable and will be maintained. So I think that is positive for everybody.
I just heard a really great term that sort of relates to this. It's called the bus factor. And this is the idea that, you know, if you have a project and, you know, how many people could get hit by a bus and your project would still carry on.
Nice.
And I think this is the sort of equivalent at kind of company terms. You want to make sure that even if one, because new projects quite often come from, you know, majority from one company.
Right.
And you want to know that if that company, you know, goes under or just decides to stop supporting a project, there is enough support for it to carry on. And that's one of the important criteria that Fluent D and the other graduated projects have achieved.
Yeah, and now there's another important point, which is responsibility. Because it's different when you have contributions from a company who maybe they contribute something because they need to fix something for their own use case. But maybe if something happens, maybe that company will not take over the project, right, in a positive way. But there are other companies who will do it. So it's like a hierarchy too, you know. If you have contributors, maintainers, but people who's really focused on to make sure that things will work as proper. And so whatever happens, it will work. So yeah, so we're really happy. The whole contributors, developers, so everybody was happy. We were talking, main developers for Fluent D are here. They flew from Japan. They were talking with the people, so they engage and they are seeing what's the real impact of your daily work. And I think that really matters.
Nice. And please catch us up on what is Fluent D and how's it different, or what's relation to Fluent Bit?
Bet, yeah.
Yes.
There's always a confusion. So in 2015, we had Fluent D. It was widely adopted.
And Fluent D is a
Fluent D.
data collector. It's a data collector,
processor, and shipper.
Okay.
But on 2015, we were also envision all these things, those IoT things, embedded stuff is coming. But we want to make sure that Fluent D or anything of part of the ecosystem is ready for that, because that will take 4 years. Right? So we created this project which is called Fluent Bit to solve the log collection problem in embedded devices, it's constrained environments.
So it's specifically for IoT.
Yeah. It was for embedded Linux at the beginning.
Embedded.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But the market in embedded was really fragmented at that moment, and nobody paid attention to Fluent Bit, except people from the cloud. They say, hey, this is really great. I'm using it. Hey, this is for embedded, but it works everywhere. Right? But they said, hey, we missed this filter, we missed the feature A, B, and C. So we switched the focus. We started adding filtering for Kubernetes, for Docker, parsing, Elasticsearch integration, and all of that. So, and we saw that people from the cloud space pay a lot of attention to it and saw it as a good component to be integrated with Fluent D, or even now that it can work also as a standalone mode. With Fluent D or without it. So right now, Fluent D has like millions of deployments. Fluent Bit is in the order of 120,000 deployments a day.
So it's mature. It's mature software.
Yeah.
Great,
Every day we got thousands of deployments. So we are really careful about releases. We cannot break things, right? Because people always like to have the last version of this. So if we mess up the things, we are going to mess up thousands of companies. So, and the story is like that. So we started for embedded, we switched it back to cloud. And now, this year, this also comes with a focus because we were acquired by ARM. Fluent was just supported by Treasure Data. And so they say, hey, we had all these gateways, we have all this software stack right now. It's not just hardware ARM. We have all the software, the Pelion device system. And they said, hey, we need something like Fluent, but also that can work on constrained environments. And that's Fluent. Okay. So right now, Fluent is a solution that can work in the cloud, but also in embedded Linux environments. And people can choose. We just have many talks about Fluent these days, and people say, I use Fluent, I use Fluent, I use both. And that's fine.
Excellent. So Fluent originally was developed by you and a couple other people. The contributor base was initially very small, I take it.
Yeah, actually, the core of Fluent is really small, but the strategy from the beginning was to make it open source and make it a pluggable architecture. So people who needed to perform log collection, log processing, and ship the data, for example, to Amazon or a MySQL database, could write an extension without problem.
Nice.
And that ended up that as of today, we have 1,000 of plugins.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, but we don't. It's crazy. But we don't maintain that, of course. For example,
this is all done by outsiders.
The principal from the maintainer from our company, they maintain maybe 20 plugins on the part of the core, but all of the others are from Microsoft, Red Hat, Google.
Right, for the different sources. Terrific. And so, what does the TOC bring for you? What benefits does it provide? How do you interact with it?
I think that the CNCF and the TOC, I think that they had a wide vision about the market and the upcoming trends and the upcoming challenges. I think that is a real value because you know how you can align your project for the challenges that are upcoming. So in our category, which is data management, we always have more data. So performance will always be a pain.
Right.
Year after year, year after year. Even in the edge side or on the cloud side. So we're always looking forward to see how we can improve that. And the TOC always has a wide vision because it's people with more experience like Liz and Matt. So they have been working in the field for years. So, and also the TOC is working together with the companies. Members from the companies are in the TOC, but with a huge background in technology and experience. And I think that is very valuable for us.
Nice. Yeah. So how do you populate each project's TOC? Are these, of course, there's the maintainers. Are there? How do you feel? First of all, how many people are on each TOC, and then how do you find the people?
So there's just one TOC.
Okay.
And the TOC currently has 9 people in that. Trying to remember exactly how this balances out. There's one end user representative who's Jeff Brewer from Intuit. So he's elected by the end user member companies of the CNCF. There are 2 seats from, I think it's the maintainers who elect those last 2. I can't quite remember how the constituency comes up.
But the spots come up from the maintainer community.
Yeah, and then there are 6 spots that come from the governing board. And
the CNCF governing board.
The CNCF governing board, indeed. And the idea is that there's a kind of overlap of terms so that as new members are elected, there's a kind of rolling continuity from one TOC to the next. But it's still quite it's only been in existence for 3 years.
4 years.
Yeah. So, it's gone from the stage of figuring out how the governance of projects should work and how we should go through these processes. I think we're now at a point where it's pretty well established. The things like the sandbox, incubation, graduation criteria are fairly well understood. And now we're trying to figure out making sure that we can leverage the SIGs for scalability and that we have all the processes super clear. And because there's always something, I think in the past it's not always been totally transparent to projects what it is they need to do or who they need to talk to for things. I don't know if that's been your experience, but we want to make sure that as a new project want to join the CNCF, we can smooth out the path and make the processes, very clear.
So the TOC has no say in the technology choices from any of the projects?
Well, we do have kind of requirements around things like, it has to fit with the cloud native principles. Right. When projects come to us, it's not just about things like the governance, but it is also, does this fit with, this overall vision of what cloud native is about? And, is there a demand for it?
Yeah.
And we also have an interesting kind of balance between, we don't want to be a prescriptive stack, we don't want to dictate, it's not one size fits all. But sometimes where there are choices, we don't want to make it really confusing for end users. So there is an interesting challenge around the balance of, how many projects there should be. In 10 years' time, if we had, 2,000 projects, I don't think that would necessarily be a good thing. Right. But I don't know what the number should be.
Does the TOC make the decision of which projects become CNCF projects?
They have to apply to us in the first place. We do sometimes, solicit projects. You might see a project and think that would actually fill a gap, and we might suggest to a project that they might like the support of the CNCF behind them. So it has to be a kind of collaborative thing between the project and the TOC.
Excellent. And a cloud-native technology, just generally speaking, would have a certain number of basic characteristics. I guess open source would be one of them. Primarily to be run in a cloud environment might be another.
Yeah, so I guess 2 years ago, there was a fairly straightforward definition that talked about running microservices in containers under orchestration. And while that was a kind of good definition to get started with, it turns out that actually it doesn't cover things like serverless things like structuring things through APIs, reproducibility, scalability. None of those things were really addressed in that original definition. So last year, a new definition has been written. It's 3 paragraphs, so I don't have it memorized, but it's all about this kind of API-driven scalability. Orchestration is an important part, but we talk about the things being I can't remember the word, but it's not prescriptive. They're sort of epitomized by having these characteristics.
Nice. I know recently with the launch of the CD Foundation, there's a lot of discussion of, which technology should go with which foundation. But it sounds like the CD Foundation, it needs to be somewhat separate than Cloud Native because it's addressing a different set of concerns. Are you finding that increasingly the projects, either they fit in the CNCF bucket or they really should go elsewhere because they're kind of adjoining? Or what's the TOC's thought on that?
Well, I guess first of all, the CDF is a sister foundation under the Linux Foundation to the CNCF. So we're not, we're all part of the same family. There is quite a lot of overlap there in that CI and CD is really a very core part of people's use of cloud native technologies, but not all CD is for cloud native. Right. So I think that's why the existence of the separate.
It's a Venn diagram, not a subset.
It is, yeah.
and actually, there's something very important points from a year ago. We are seeing that since we work in the data area, we are seeing that is a huge movement to the edge too. So you talk about the cloud, but now, for example, this is a topic we are working on really heavy this year, is about edge computing, because people say, hey, we are working with cloud native technologies, but we would like to defer some computing stuff to the edge, because here sometimes too heavy, we need to improve performance, get a faster loop stuff, and I was talking like a year ago with them and say, hey, we are touching also with embedded Linux. We are getting overlap with LF Edge, which is like a new foundation. So it's like everything is becoming one big thing. I don't know how that will work in the future, but at least from a data management point of view, we are seeing that. For example, in our project, we work in the cloud space, but now we are doing this stuff called stream processing on the edge.
We've been seeing a lot of interest.
And this is totally new stuff. And we're showcasing these days, and people say, hey, this is great, because it's totally a new thing. But it's related with cloud native. But it doesn't run in the cloud, it runs on the edge. But also, it depends on the concept of how do you look at it. Because the edge can be your Kubernetes node.
Oh, yeah.
The edge can be your embedded
device. Doesn't have to be an actual edge.
Exactly. It's how do you defer the computing time, maybe in the cloud server, or where you're going to do it. Because, for example, think about data processing. People usually take the data, ingest the data into database, and there's the indexing process, and that takes time. And then you can do data analysis.
Right.
And that can take a couple of minutes. But people say, hey, I need the results in seconds. Hell no.
It's kind of like the old, I'm going to show my age here, but, we had the whole debate around thin client and fat client.
It's all cyclical. It's
a
coming
very
around.
similar, it just goes to show these things are always going in cycles, and virtualization is a thing that happened on mainframes.
Right. Everything goes to the center, and then it spreads out again to become more distributed. But you're seeing a lot of interest in stream processing, then.
Yeah, and so we were doing a demo today, and actually we were surprised because we did some stream processing locally in a laptop. We were able to crash database because we were ingesting too much data. It was from a laptop.
Right.
That was surprising. And after that, we were able to decrease the load of the data and perform the queries, and that took more than 1 minute in a laptop.
Right.
We did the stream processing on the edge. It took 3 seconds.
So nice.
What kind of so there are many challenges here. So it means that we can do it better when processing data and to get faster results. And I think that this is something really new. And edge computing this year is everywhere. And that is also about security. Because, for example, everybody told us, hey, you're shipping your logs or data logging from point A to point B. What about the security? No, we use TLS. Yeah, but you cannot ship special information because it's our credit cards or numbers or whatever.
Right.
Oh, okay. So where do you do the processing? You had to do it in the edge.
Yeah.
And then you just ship the results where sometimes you can reduce your security risk because you are not shipping all the data and just the results.
And you run into like HIPAA and various other regulatory climates where it has to be encrypted at rest, or it has to be encrypted in transit, and so you have to provide for that in a constrained environment.
And sometimes cannot be a constrained environment, can be a normal server. But happen that most of the tooling that we have for the stream processing, I don't want to blame any technology, but sometimes requires a Java stack, and sometimes are a bit heavy. Right? They're really good, really strong, but not all people can deploy a huge Java stack on every node.
Right.
So, but if you said, hey, we have this solution, for example, written in C language, and it uses 5 megabytes of RAM,
then boom, yeah.
So it's, hey, let's give it a try.
Right.
Because you decrease your CPU cycles in the cloud, you decrease your network bandwidth, so your network traffic, so you optimize your bandwidth. So there are many benefits if you can distribute the load in the work that you have to do to perform your data operations.
Are people doing that for a cost reason as well, to offload
from expensive
from
cloud?
the expense of the cloud to do processing at the edge? Is cost sometimes?
Yeah, but because imagine that you have a field with a bunch of sensors, and you want to do data processing. So you're going to take all the data from the sensors, you're going to ship the data to the cloud, and then you set the charge of the network, the power, and then the queries for your database, and you got the results. But do you need all those thousands of data samples in the cloud? No, because if you have something running very lightweight on the edge side, you just send the results. Maybe you don't need every 100 samples per second. Maybe you just need the results of the latest minute.
You do the preliminary filtering.
Exactly. Yeah, it's filtering with aggregation. You can define windows of timing where to do the calculations. So it's really interesting. And the good thing is that there's no concept of database because everything happens in memory.
Nice. I wanted to throw out one final, topic of discussion. We're talking about groups who decide on software, where it's going, that sort of thing. And I remember from the standards bodies from the old days. Now I know CNCF isn't a standard body, but I guess you call them de facto standards. It's like, here's a group of technologies that we will guarantee will stay in an open source environment going forward. And I remember the older standards bodies, they had a problem of like maybe one or two companies coming in and basically stonewalling, slowing down the whole process, so nothing could be issued from a standard couldn't be updated because some vendor wanted to protect a proprietary bit or something like that. How do you prevent? How would you prevent the same thing from happening with the CNCF projects?
I think that's one of the key reasons why we're not a standards body. You know, we're not in the business of writing standards that people then implement. It's much more about a project that is, I mean, sometimes they do come from one vendor initially, but the intention is that they will establish themselves to be vendor neutral.
Right.
And then the governance requirements should, I mean, companies will always want to influence, but ultimately it's about the implementation. There's no kind of, I mean, we do have some projects that are specs, but they very much have to be, you know, in the open. So I'm thinking of things like TUF, which is the update framework. And it goes hand in hand with the implementation, which is Notary. And actually at the point where it came into the project, it was already pretty well established. But yeah, that thing of getting people into a room and trying to reach compromises, and you know, the word compromise is not always a positive thing.
Right? Sure.
No, and actually, from a project perspective, we appreciate that flexibility because it's like the TOC, they care a lot about the governance, maybe some vision about, hey, these are the problems of communication with the companies who are using the products. At the end, they're products, but also it's something that we have that kind of freedom to say, hey, today we are going to release a new version or a major version, and that's it. In other cases, it's not like that. So there's a few process for a major release or to introduce new features. So I think that the way that CNCF works with the project maintainers and the projects in general in the community is really good because it has that flexibility. And also they have the vision, so it's like a good balance.
Yeah, we talk about light touch. You know, we're not there to run projects. We're just a support mechanism for projects rather than management, you know.
Yeah, because it's not about the projects. At the end, it's like to solve a technology problem that people is facing in the companies.
Sure.
And the projects, it's like the tool to solve that problem.
Yeah.
So, and they care about that the whole process for this tooling get straight to the companies in a clear and honest way.
Nice. So if a company wants to put in a proprietary extension to offer a special service, that's on them, but that wouldn't necessarily slow down the project in any sort of way.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Terrific. Well, I thank you both for taking time to get us up to speed on the TOC and the SIG and Fluent D. And I thank the listeners and viewers for tuning in.